It's time for the Hockey Minute, your source for all of today's hockey news with some opinion. Strap in for the fastest news in the NHL. This episode is proudly brought to you by fucking nobody. We don't have any sponsors. Now, here's your hosts, Brandon and Ryan.
And here we are. Welcome back to another edition of the Hockey Minute. I am your host, Brandon. With me, as always, my co-host, Ryan. And today we have your news blast for May 26th, 2020. But first, please subscribe with whatever podcatcher you use. Leave us a review on iTunes or voicemail on Anchor if you're fired up about something we said or something you think we should be doing better. We'll play it on the podcast, I promise. All right, before we get into our news blast, let's check in with the dulcet tones of my baritone co-host, Ryan. How you doing, man?
You know, I've been caught up in the drama from that Call Her Daddy show. Have you ever listened to that show?
Oh, no. I actually haven't. No, tell me.
I haven't listened to it either. It's not something you'd want your daughters to listen to. I'll put it that way. But
okay.
But it's like I was caught up in the drama of how they're in this big contractual dispute with Barstool, and got me thinking. I mean, how would our feud? What would be the basis for us blowing up? Like you and I have a feud, like because I feel like we don't want much. We're just a couple of nice Western Canadian guys. I feel like you'd want a contract where you're like, I have to like hang out with Brock Besser for like a day, and then Matt would be like, I don't know if I can do that, and you just like flip your shit. You'd be like, no.
Or like you interviewed him solo and didn't tell me for some reason. I think that might be it. That might do it.
Yeah. Like I ran into him at like Red Robin. I was like, hey, do you have 20 minutes just to like talk while our food's coming? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then I'm just like, oh, hey guys, I got Brock Besser. And I feel like you would, that would probably be it. It wouldn't be about money. It would just be like, just something hockey related.
Yeah, like I'm really just hoping that we can get a trip to New York out of this somehow at some point, and then I think we'll be pretty happy. So I think right now our aims are pretty low. I don't think we're looking for that $100 million Rogan money yet.
Yeah, that's true. I do. If I remember correctly, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Matt said he'd fly us out. So
you're a damn fool.
Yeah.
All right. Should we get into our news blast?
Yeah.
The NHL is set to resume with a 24-team playoff format. We're calling it the Asterisk Cup. It's set to go ahead, but not without some controversy. According to Elliot Friedman, the NHLPA executive, that's one player rep from 31 teams, voted to go ahead with a 24-team format.
Akeem Alou calls for change, claims hockey is not for everyone. His recent piece in the Players Tribune calls out hockey culture.
And a huge thank you to our audience for our first 1,000 listens. All right, so let's get into it. So the NHL is set to resume with the 24-team format. I mean, it's still pretty in the air. There aren't any dates or anything set yet. We're looking. Basically, all that's happened is the NHLPA executive, one player from each of the 31 teams voted to go ahead with the 24-team format, where the top 4 teams of each conference would basically wait, having a bye while the other teams played in a 5-game series to play the winner. I mean, there's already some controversy in that. Some players are fairly upset. I think that they didn't get a say in it. I mean, I know that I wouldn't be too happy about being forced into something without having a vote, something this significant. I mean, 2 to 3 months away from your family is nothing to scoff at. Anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, it's so tough, right? We talked about it a little bit on a previous episode. Philip Deneau had been interviewed, and he said that he's got a young son, and he said, I just don't want to take 2 or 3 months away from my child. And, I know you've got 2 young kids. You've talked about it. You wouldn't want to do that either.
Right.
I think that overall, it's not just the players, too. I mean, you got to have the equipment managers. You have to have the video guys. Like, I would imagine every player and personnel has to take part in this, and it's aside from the 7 teams that aren't even making this extended playoff, but it's tough because the players, in a way, they are entertainers. They're paid very well for what they do, but we have to almost look at the human side of some of these guys that have kids, that have wives. Who, I mean, maybe it's like a young guy like, as an example, a Quinn Hughes. I mean, he's a 18, 19-year-old defenseman. But if he had a sick parent, or a sick grandparent. Maybe he doesn't want to go, right? It's just something like that as an example. I'm not saying Quinn Hughes is in that situation. So, I mean, it's tough because on the one hand, as a fan, I want hockey back. I know a lot of people do, but I mean, we also have to kind of look at these guys and go, that's a lot to ask. And from the mental health side of it as well, I saw that the city of Edmonton was making a video and they were highlighting, they've got golf courses and stuff like that. But man, at the end of the day, there's only so much golf you can do and limited resources that you can take part in before you miss home and you miss being around your family. And I don't know. I just think it would be really tough.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there's so many variables here before they even get going. But I mean, it's one of the things I think I'm really curious to see is just what shape are these guys going to come back in. I mean, I think we've all seen the videos of certain players working out with their wives on their backs, but there's probably an equal amount of other players who have been taking it easy like it's been the off season. And is 4 to 6 weeks going to be enough to be able to get them into the same shape as the other guys that have been going hard the whole time? Yeah. It's going to be really, really wild to see the disparity. And I think some of those teams that have the bye might actually be at a bit of a disadvantage because playing a warm-up exhibition, playing shinny against another conference winner or, challenger is nothing compared to the first round of the playoffs. So I think that some of these teams might be in for a real surprise.
Well, to counterpoint that, though, I feel like the teams that have the bye, I wonder if they would almost just kind of go into this as an agreement, like we're not going to play balls to the wall here in our little exhibition tune-up games, right? Because they're thinking long-term. Maybe a guy goes out and just tries to run the star player in an exhibition game and try to injure him or something. I don't know. But I feel like in a way, if I was, a team like the Bruins, I think, are one of the squads that have the bye, I would almost just, whoever we're playing, I would just be like, you know what, let's play it like it's a preseason kind of tune-up game and just take it from there, take it easy, get the legs going, and let the other guys that are actually playing for something, let them kill each other. And then, you kind of just step into maybe an easier matchup potentially. But it's not going to be the best.
Yeah, but how fast do you get your legs under you? Like, can you get to the playoff pace before you're down 2-0 in a series? Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like if whoever's playing a 7-game series isn't coming in hot, and then you've been sitting around playing at 60%, I'm not sure that everybody's going to be confident they can get it up fast enough. But
well, it's never going to be it's not going to be the best hockey. I mean, some of these guys have been interviewed on different podcasts and different, TSN and Sportsnet that they've said there's not much they can do. I mean, some guys I think have had access. They can't really admit to it, but some guys have said that they've had access to, or hinted that they've had access to a rink where they go in at midnight just to skate and shoot a puck around. But again, I mean, I've gone to just drop in hockey at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, and it's not nearly the same compete level as playing in an actual game that means something, right? So I think everyone, if people are thinking, oh yes, playoff hockey will be coming back and can't wait for the speed and the guys just hammering each other and the intensity, I hate to tell you this, but I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be like watching like an East Coast League game or like a Div 1 men's league game. Like, it's going to be still world class athletes and guys that have incredible hands, incredible shots and whatever, but it's going to be rusty for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not expecting it to be super pretty off the bat, but I am just so excited to be having hockey come back in any capacity. I haven't heard anything in terms of any kind of medical conditions added to the terms of play or anything like that. It seems like they're just talking about returning.
Yeah.
So hopefully we don't hear anything about the no fighting, face shields, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing is, like, the UFC, for instance, had an event last weekend, or 2 weekends ago when this comes out. But I mean, yeah, it was weird because they had the corner guys, the ring announcers and everything were all separated. Everyone's wearing face masks, except for the two guys that are actually in the fight, and they're sweating and bleeding on each other. Like, it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I did see something that apparently the quarantine period, they're going to waive that for the players. So if you're coming from wherever these hub cities are going to be. Like, keep in mind, we're in phase 1. There's still many phases to go. They just said we're going to do this. Now it's about the planning and the logistics of it. But what I heard was that they're going to basically waive that if you're coming into, say, Edmonton as a hub city, and you're coming from the States, they're just going to waive that 2-week quarantine period and just go, and that would make sense. The guys know now that they're going to be playing, so now would be the time you just hunker down and wait for that phase 2 and phase 3 to kind of roll out. And at that point, you're jumping on a flight to somewhere. So I think it'll be interesting, but we'll see. I mean, all it takes is 1 or 2 guys to get it, and I think that they got to shut the whole thing down, because at the end of the day, it's the player's health is more important than the game.
Yeah, and what are they going to do if there's still quarantines in place when it comes time to change hub cities or whatever the case is as the rounds move along, right? Like, because I'm pretty sure they aren't playing the entire thing in one city, right? Aren't they talking about multiple hub cities?
Yeah. I don't know. I think they'll just do an esports tournament to wrap it up. Let's go with that.
Can you fucking imagine? Like, play 2.5 months and then it's an NHL 20 final between like Gretzky and Bure or something. Yeah. Just 2 tangentially related players to whatever franchise.
No, they'll just pick the guys, right? But yeah, the guys are just too tired. They're like, let's just settle this online. Meet me online.
Yeah, just sim it. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next story. We really didn't have a lot of quantity of story, but we had great quality. Cupolo calls for change, and in an article that came out in the Players Tribune titled "Hockey is Not for Everyone," he weighs in on pretty much his experience all throughout junior hockey, all the way up to the NHL. So, sensitive subject, Brandon. I have a lot of thoughts on this, but first off, what do you think when you read the article?
Oh man. I think that everybody has an experience. What are my thoughts, Brandon? This is, on paper, it feels way easier to talk about, and then you feel like you're putting your foot in your mouth every time you say something about it. I think everybody knows Akim Aliu from the Bill Peters incident, if not before, with the Windsor Spitfires, right? I mean, I'm sure you're aware of him from then. I don't necessarily have the memory of it, but he's definitely one of the main faces of the change of culture in hockey, especially in the junior ranks in terms of hazing. And I mean, first, I think we have to give a huge credit to him for standing up to Steve Downey, right? And getting his yeah, I shouldn't laugh, getting his teeth knocked in and all that kind of stuff, for kind of wanting to step outside of outside of what can be a very insidious bullying culture in certain circumstances. But I think one thing that Akim seems to miss frequently is that hockey breeds a lot of really incredible people. And I mean, they don't have to be at the pro level to be that, but it seems to be aimed at making good men that can contribute to society, and you can't hold one psychopath or a few shitty experiences up as the kind of the prototype for the rest of everybody that plays. I find that a little bit unsettling and unfair. But as far as his own time and his story, man, it sucks for him. I definitely feel for him for having to have gone through those experiences. But at the same time, I mean, I said this to you before the show. I'm a big believer in the individual, and I know that everybody has hardships to work through, and that's everybody's individual challenge, and that may be a little bit uncomfortable for people to hear or talk about today. But I really believe that, and I think that, I mean, we only have so much energy, right? If you want to spend forever focusing on whatever shit you think is being done to you, that's great, but you're never going to get anything done yourself. You might as well focus on the stuff that you can actually affect and impact in your life, and I think you'll actually do a lot better. But I don't think we need to get too much into that.
Yeah, I mean, but you're very, like what you just said, that's very well said. I mean, everyone does have stuff. I have a younger brother that was 19, had a life-changing spinal injury, and after years, his life will never be the same, and yet he's very positive. He's very driven. I look up to him, even though I'm the older brother. And
Right.
You're right. Everybody has stuff that they go through. Now, a couple things. I don't. First of all, I just want to preface this by saying I'm not trying to downplay, and we're not trying to downplay or discredit anything Akeem Aliu went through. Like what we know, what we know factually. You mentioned that you remember him from the Rockford incident. I remember him from Windsor with the Spitfires and the incident with Steve Downey. Mm-hmm. And he talked about that in the article, and he kind of said that was how people were introduced to him as the guy that didn't follow the hockey culture. And I kind of disagree with that, because I remember when that happened, TSN did this whole thing about how junior hockey needs to change. This is obviously an issue. Junior hockey, they can't allow this to happen anymore. And that's how I remember him, as a catalyst for change in junior. Like, there are guys now where if you're playing in the Western League, the Ontario League, or the Quebec League, man, the hardest thing you have to do as a rookie is maybe pick up the pucks at the end of practice, and like it's not nearly as bad as what it once was. And he, so I kind of disagreed with him on that. So when he references Downey as a racist sociopath, like, I totally believe that. I totally agree with that. Like, nobody has a positive memory of Steve Downey as a hockey player.
Yeah.
My big three memories of Downey: the hit on Dean McCammon in, I think it was 2007. McCammon was coming behind the net, and Downey met him on the other side and leapt into his head. And Downey was suspended 20 games. And I want to say that was preseason. Like, it was so unnecessary that he did that. And then there was the time he was with the Lightning. He left the bench to join a line brawl against the Rangers. And then when he was with the Penguins, he tried to fight everyone on the Washington Capitals at the end of a game, and to the point where the referee was screaming in his face, "Knock it off!" And he still was trying to just stir something up. So that's how we all will remember Steve Downey, as just a kind of a bust of a first rounder and not an effective player at all. The article rubbed me the wrong way in a couple of ways, and I appreciate that I didn't go through what Akeem Aliu went through. And like I said, I'm not downplaying what he went through. But, he talks about some of this stuff in the article where he says, I'm not trying to drag the NHL through the mud. I'm not trying to drag hockey through the mud. But he wants change. And that's fine that he wants change. But when I read the article, and I read it a couple of times, he never talked about the positives for hockey. We're talking about incidents that happened in 2005 and 2009. And in the 10 years since the Rockford incident, which, by the way, in the article he says he felt alone, and yet he also acknowledges his captain went to Bill Peters and confronted him. Like, I'm sure that the guys in the dressing room had an issue with what was said.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the 10 years since, when you look at how the NHL has become more accepting, whether it's the you can play, they have gay pride events, they've got events for people with disabilities, obviously they take part in Black History Month. And when you look at some of the players in the NHL that are black, Aliu references that black kids may not have anyone to look up to, and I disagree with that, because I think that you have all kinds of walks of life in the NHL, white or black, but especially, I think of Seth Jones as one of the best NHL defensemen. Yeah. His dad played in the NBA, so he came from a good family, probably came from some money, and he carved his own path, played hockey, was a top pick in 2013. He was projected to potentially go number one. Mm-hmm. Darnell Nurse was 7th overall that same year. Darnell Nurse, I think his uncle is Donovan McNabb. Right. So, again, a guy that probably could have followed his uncle's path, played football. He picks hockey, and those two guys are studs. Subban, the brothers, Malcolm and PK. I mean, Malcolm was a first-round pick. PK is a Norris Trophy winning defenseman. But conversely, a guy like Wayne Simmons, I read an article about him probably 10 years ago now, talking about how he was growing up, he was so poor that other parents would have to buy gear for him just to allow him to continue to chase his dream.
Right.
And I think that Alou's article doesn't touch on any of that. Like he just talked about his own experiences, and I'll agree with him that maybe Bill Peters torpedoed his career in the Chicago system, but then he goes to a different organization and he ends up playing 7 games with the Calgary Flames. I looked up his stats. I mean, he was never going to be an NHL player. Like our staff writer Marcus came on and talked about just how the small percentage of draft picks that make the NHL and play up to 100 games and so on. And Alou, I mean, he's a borderline AHL player. So I took kind of issue with the fact that he's saying there's no role models in hockey for black kids, because I think when you look at PK Subban, he's the most marketable player in the game. And
Jerome McGinley, man.
Yeah, right. Like there's plenty, and that's the thing. And then even from a coaching standpoint, Paul Gerard was an assistant coach in Dallas, and and again, he says that Alou in the article said he wants something similar to what the NFL has, where they've got something called the Rooney Rule, and that means that you have to interview minorities
for what?
Coaching or for GM or anything, right?
Man, I'm a merit person. It's fucking sports. I'm sorry. The best person for the job always. I don't give a fuck what color you are. We could have an all whatever. Like, it does not matter. Yeah. If they were good, hire them. I'm so tired of that stuff, man. Just like let the best person for the job take the job.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. I didn't think that's a good idea, because if you it puts the coach in a situation too. Let's say you hire a black coach. Well, it puts him in a situation where some people might say, well, he only got hired because of this demand for diversity.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. It puts him in a shitty spot.
Right. And then if he blows it, then he maybe doesn't get another chance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say about this, the thing that did bother me, and I only bring this up because the whole point of the article was about diversity and how he says, I don't think hockey is for everyone. Well, he references that the NHL, and I'm quoting this, shoved LGBTQ programs into Black History Month as if it was a chore to them, end quote.
Right.
First of all, Gay Pride Month is in June. So the NHL doesn't even play much in June. Their focus is on the Cup final. But it also came across as odd that he seemed very upset that Black History Month is now having to share that month with the LGBTQ community. And these are two demographics that want equality. And yet Akeem kind of says, something like that. It sounds like he wants special recognition for the black community and doesn't want to include another underrepresented demographic. So I didn't like that, especially because I have gay friends.
Yeah.
and I kind of took offense, maybe on their behalf a little bit, but I took offense to that because I'm going, you want equality, but you're not going to allow them to take part in a program that the NHL does a very good job, I think, of just trying to bring acceptance to everybody. So
one thing I wanted to add, I guess, is it feels like the whole thing feels icky to me, right? I guess it's the only way to say it. Like I totally get that the message may be good, but I feel like there's just something. It's almost like he's taken his incidents and using that and painting everybody with it, which is the exact thing that he claims that he's fighting, in racism and bringing diversity and all of these things, right? It's just like there's a level of hypocrisy to it that makes me feel gross.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't even mention the fact that you got for other kids. I mean, so we're in the Vancouver area. Jujhar Khaira of the Edmonton Oilers is only the third Punjabi player to ever make the NHL. He's a hero in our neck of the woods, like Surrey minor hockey. They love Jujhar, like they worship this guy. Nazem Kadri is a Muslim, and again, there are probably Muslim players all across Canada and the United States that maybe they look up to Kadri and they say, player aside, because he's a bit of a rat on the ice, but I think he's a great role model for those kids that think, that they don't have someone to look to. Well, now you do. And Nazem Kadri was a top 10 pick, played in the biggest market in the NHL for years before moving on to the Avs, right? And I would like to think that Nazem Kadri, for all his faults as a player, probably does a lot that we maybe don't even hear about in just promoting the game and, as a Muslim player. He's talked about in the past about going through the season and during Ramadan, and how that is kind of difficult for him because obviously there's so much energy expenditure. So like I said, I think that this whole hockey is for everyone. I think that the NHL has done a fantastic job. Alou even said that he met with Gary Bettman and Bill Daly.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, he left that meeting feeling really good, and then he writes an article months after that meeting, and he says he doesn't want to drag the league through the mud, but he kind of, in my opinion, he did. And the reason why I get kind of frustrated reading this is just that if I had never watched hockey, if I was not a fan, if I had never played, and I read this article, it doesn't paint a good picture, in my opinion anyways. Like it makes a lot of things sound like hockey really is this exclusive, if you're not a rich white kid, you have no chance of making it. And I just feel like that's totally incorrect.
I mean, it wouldn't bug me if it painted a poor picture if it was true. The issue for me is that it doesn't paint an honest picture. I feel like it's a very skewed negative stance towards hockey and its culture.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I'll say about these articles is that they are ghostwritten. So, I mean, maybe something's lost in translation. I don't know how this would have been written. Maybe Alou records his thoughts, sends it over to somebody to write it, but that's the only kind of like, okay, well, I could see if maybe the writer interpreted a statement differently. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, the whole article, I just found it didn't touch on any of the positives. And it sounded very much like a guy that, as he said at the beginning, he is a victim. We're not trying to take that away from him, what he went through. But instead of turning it around and going, okay, again, he's the catalyst for change. He was at the junior level. And now at the NHL level, he's getting a meeting with the two most powerful guys in the NHL to talk about what can we do. And that's proactive of the league to go, what can we do to make sure this sort of thing never happens again? And then he comes out with an article basically saying hockey is for everyone. I laugh when I hear that statement because it's not.
They're not doing enough to change. Well, like you're currently involved in helping, so.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, well, what did you expect? It's not going to be an overnight thing. So if hockey can change at the grassroots level, and that's true for any sport. I mean, baseball has had examples of, American kids being racist towards the Dominican or the Mexican kids that come up for that Little League World Series and all that stuff. Like, I mean, basketball, I'm sure you've got a lot of black players and only a few white players. Like maybe there's been something similar that's happened in that level, right?
This just has nothing to do with race at all from my perspective, like our criticisms here. Like if this was fucking Sven Berchi bitching because he didn't think he got a fair shake because he was Swiss, I would have the exact same take. Like it's ridiculous. Like you didn't get a take in the NHL or a crack at the NHL because you weren't good enough.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like I said, it's tough because again, and we saw this with Robin Lehner, who tweeted something rather innocent, like talking about his own experiences, didn't even have anything to do with Akim Alou, and people attacked Robin Lehner.
You know what, man? Honestly, can you fill me in on that? Because I saw the outrage, but I never actually found the original tweet, and I'm not on Twitter enough to track anything down. So
yeah, all it was Lehner basically just tweeted something about his own struggles with his own bipolar disorder. And his obviously he was an alcoholic, and he just talked about how you go through these phases in life. I'm paraphrasing, but he was basically saying that he overcame, and he tweeted this out the same day as this article dropped. And
but not in relation to the article, right?
No, he never tweeted at Akim Alou or anything like that. But people were going at Lehner like really hard, and it's the stuff that you expect on Twitter because it's a complete joke of a social media platform. But for them to say, well, it's as a white guy, how dare you kind of downplay, and he was really surprised. Like he tweeted out again, and Devin Setaguchi, who is I believe native Canadian, came to his defense as well. It said, I've known it's. I can't remember. I don't think they ever played on the same team. I tried to see the overlap, but I couldn't find anything. But Setaguchi said, Lehner's not a racist. I've known him for years. He's never once had any sort of opinion that can be deemed racist. And then, of course, the backpedaling.
How you can even make that jump, man? That's insane. How that's nutty to me.
But right. But that's what I mean. And that's why I was always like, I was kind of hesitant to get into this anyways, because, I'm a white guy who played hockey for almost 20 years. And it just seems like in this day and age with the social media, it's...
Yeah, but you know what's in your heart, right? Like, you're not racist. I know I'm not racist, but we just know what's bullshit.
Oh, but I played with some kids. Yeah, like I played with kids that were phenomenal hockey players that were of Indian descent. I played with this Asian kid. His name was Aaron, and this kid was a complete machine. Like he never went on to play anything like higher than what we'd played at, but he would have been the enforcer for any team. Like he trained MMA. This kid, I'd love to have him on, but this kid was a complete animal. Like he would show up and he'd just be like, "Yeah, I just got out of a 2-hour grappling session." I'm like, "Oh shit!" But yeah, I don't think that this has anything to do. Like we're not taking issue with some of the things in the article, like you said, because of race. It's not because of race. It's just that the tone of it was just more of not acknowledging the success of black players in the NHL, the efforts from the NHL to make a stand to go, we want to include, whether it's black fans, like that guy in St. Louis, Tony something, a few years ago. I don't know if you remember him, but he was tweeting out live during the game. Like
the guy that got invited to the game?
Yeah, like they invited him to the game because he was...
Yeah, that was hilarious.
He was like, why are they pulling the goalie? Like, we gotta stop that Patrick Kane, right? And they flew him out to the game.
That's right.
And they made him, I think they tried to get him to be a presenter at the NHL Awards and he missed his flight. So, but I mean, again, like, are we not going to talk about that as a good thing with the NHL? So, I didn't like the article for several points. I do think though that obviously Akim Aliu, what happened to him? There's no place for it. But I just think that that's few and far between, man. I mean, how many teams are in junior and across the Canadian Hockey League had stories like what happened in Windsor?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And one quick point I wanted to touch on before we move on is that it's like culture is shifting in general, right? Like the general zeitgeist isn't necessarily accepting any more of the hazing culture. I mean, just look at, we don't have it in Canada, but the US college and university culture, there's been a lot of scandals related to hazing, and that has been going away over the last decade or two as well, right? Like it's a fairly ubiquitous thing that's no longer acceptable. And so for somebody to come out championing that it needs to go away and then potentially taking credit for its dissolution just feels wrong to me. But anyway, there's so many things here that bug me about this situation that probably may not come across well to an audience, but I don't know. My spidey sense for this situation, I just feel like he's capitalizing on something that is good, right? Like the movement is good. That stuff does need to change, but it may not be benefiting from the specific front man. Do you have anything more you wanted to say about this?
No, I think I've said enough.
All right. Let's get on to some happy news, guys. And I really wanted to say a huge thank you to our audience for getting us to 1,000 listens. I mean, we're all just having fun here and super proud of what we're doing. Hopefully we'll get to 10,000 and then and more on from there. From one moron to another, I guess.
Well, this moron just wants to say a couple of quick things as well. Again, guys, thank you for all the love and support. We do have a voicemail.
Oh, beautiful.
So I feel like we should play that right now.
And now.
Okay, go. I can podcast, Dad. I love you, podcast, Dad.
And now, back to you.
That was awesome, man. So thank your wife and your girls for setting that up.
Yeah, absolutely. Super sweet. I was definitely expecting something a little more vitriolic for our first voicemail, so I am absolutely pleased that that's what came through.
Yeah, and then a couple just personal notes from me. First of all, I just want to say congrats to my friend Eric and his wife Leah for their firstborn. Everything, baby's healthy, which is great to hear in this day and age. And lastly, to another podcast, Side of Ranch, guys. Check these guys out, because this is like listening to a couple of guys at a bar just chat, and they've allowed you to listen in. It's a great show. I was laughing during some of the parts of them talking about just movies and video games and just life in general. So give those guys a listen, show them some love as well, and subscribe to their podcast. You won't regret that. So, Bren, take us home, bud.
Absolutely. Do you want to let them know where they can find us real quick?
You can find us everywhere now, guys. We're on YouTube now. You can catch full episodes on YouTube, The Hockey Minute. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Overcast. As we mentioned, you can leave us voicemails on Anchor as well. So if you've got some thoughts, you can always let us know, whether it's just messaging us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at The Hockey Minute, or like I said, you can just leave us a voicemail.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. From Ryan and Brandon, we'll catch you next time on The Hockey Minute.
We'd like to take a second to thank you, the listener, for joining us. And a big thanks goes to our writers and production team, Jules, Mark, and Matt. We couldn't do this without you.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Hockey Minute, as well as leaving voicemails on our Anchor page at Hockey Minute. And always make sure to subscribe to whichever platform you listen to your podcasts.
That's going to do it for us. This is Brandon and Ryan. We'll talk to you next time on The Hockey Minute.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.